Hi everyone, welcome back to the Sports Breakdown. So today we are going to do a discussion on why Chris Gayle wasn't included in the upcoming Island series and why he didn't get a farewell match. So please, and we are going to do a live Q&A at the end. So I'll be sending the link to everyone for you guys to join at the end to ask any question for related to West Indies cricket and about Chris Gayle as well. So I brought in a guest, obviously from the Caribbean Cricket Podcast. Once again, I brought in Machel Hewitt. He's please check out the Caribbean Cricket Podcast on YouTube because I mean they're the best when it comes to delivering Caribbean cricket and all the latest updates, cricket news, and they give the fun. Check out the Caribbean Cricket. Awards for 2021 that they did. It was outstanding video. I was watching it live and it was really entertaining, especially for the catfish of the year. I was like laughing out of the health when you guys said about Dwayne Bravo, his song being the catfish of the year. So it was really hilarious and it's really fun. So please do check out their YouTube channel. And thank you once again, Machel, for coming back to Sports Breakdown. It's been a while since you come on this channel, but it's great to have you back.
Yeah, lovely, lovely. Big up the Sports Breakdown fan base. Happy to be back here. Yeah, and excited to talk about what's been another contentious issue in the lives of West Indian cricket fans. There's always some drama that's going on in West Indies cricket. That's the one thing you can guarantee.
True. So we'll be having a live Q&A at the end after doing the video on Chris Gayle and why he wasn't included. So we'll be doing that at the end. So let's start on Chris Gayle. Why wasn't Chris Gayle picked for the upcoming Island 2020 series? And yeah, let's go. And does Chris Gayle deserve a farewell, by the way? And we'll just update on the squad, by the way, Machel, on this Chris Gayle not being picked for either the 2020 series or the ODI series coming up. So this is the update. Obviously, Kyron Pollard been back for the ODI series and 2020 series, and no Chris Gayle in the list over here. And I think Evan Lewis is out also due to COVID-19. He's tested positive. But yeah, no Chris Gayle whatsoever, and he doesn't get a farewell match for either the Ireland tour or the England tour. Are you surprised, Mitchell? Because I mean, the West Indies select. I was watching a video on the chairman, I think, of West Indies cricket said the CEO of the West Indies cricket said they'll somehow give a chance for Chris Gayle, but not at the moment because it's up to the selectors to obviously select him, whether he'll be picked for the because they were concentrating on the upcoming 2020 World Cup. So were you surprised that West Indies Cricket Board didn't give a farewell to Chris Gayle at the Sabina Park coming up?
So this is a big topic, okay? And I'm going to try and give as balanced an answer as I possibly can. Now, the first thing to talk about is, because there's so many different angles to this particular story.
True.
The first question mark that actually has to be raised was whether a farewell match was ever going to happen. Now, the reason why I say it like that is because the president of Cricket West Indies, Ricky Skerritt, was interviewed. What day is it? Say Tuesday. He was interviewed late last week. And in that particular article, I can't remember with which media outlet it was with, but he said that a Chris Gayle farewell match was never really on the cards. They had been discussing what's the best way to honour Chris and say goodbye, but the concept of a farewell match had not really been on the discussion cards. And what the president had intimated in the article was that there were mischievous personalities within the Caribbean who had essentially created a narrative out of thin air that Cricket West Indies were going to give Chris Chris Gayle farewell match. So the first point to acknowledge in all of this is maybe there was never going to be a farewell match, and maybe this story got out of control and it almost became a talking point, even though it wasn't something that was ever going to happen. I'm not saying that's what I believe. I can only report from what I know about interviews that have taken place back home in the Caribbean and so on and so forth. So that's the first thing we have to consider. But my personal view is that I reckon, and I've got no evidence for this, by the way, so this isn't me saying these are facts, my personal view. I reckon that Cricket West Indies, if they could have got away with it, would have given Chris Gayle a farewell match. Now, when I say if they could have got away with it, what I mean is if there hadn't been so much backlash in the media in the Caribbean, then I think they might have actually given Chris the farewell match if they could have. Now, what I mean by the backlash is, and it's important for people to understand this.
Yes,
Chris, the Caribbean media has not been supportive of the idea of Chris Gayle getting a farewell match. There's no other way for me to put it other than to say it as bluntly as that. I could give you tons of examples of different media personalities, different media outlets that have spoken out vociferously against the idea of Chris Gayle getting a farewell match. And there's kind of been like two big reasons why people have spoken out against it. One, they've said he shouldn't get a farewell match because nobody else has ever got one in West Indies cricket. So they've spoken out from that point of view. Two, they've spoken out against it. And again, this is kind of my personal opinion more than basing it on clear evidence. But two, I believe there are a lot of people in the Caribbean, within the cricket circles, that don't really like Chris Gayle. And so I think this is also a personal thing for a lot of people. Now, when I say they don't really like Chris Gayle, what I mean is I'm not saying, oh, there's some personal beef that people hold, but Chris Gayle divides opinion. And when I say divides opinion, I mean within the Caribbean, he divides opinion. Outside of the Caribbean, Chris Gayle is far more appreciated than he is within the Caribbean. Within the Caribbean, it's probably 50-50. You can find a ton of people within the Caribbean that would say Chris Gayle was a mercenary. He used West Indies cricket. He went and played 2020 cricket. He cared. He's a show-off. He loves to show off his lifestyle. He only used cricket to get them up. Those type of people will never acknowledge that Chris Gayle played over 100 Test matches for the West Indies. They would never acknowledge that he played over 300 ODIs for West Indies, because the reality for Chris Gayle is there are two sides to Chris Gayle, right? There is the Chris Gayle between the year 2000 to 2014 that gave as much to West Indies cricket as any cricketer who's played for West Indies has done so. As I always love to point out, he's our top 8. He's in the top 8 Test run scorers of all time. He's got 2 Test triples. He's our number 1 ODI run scorer of all time. He's the greatest T20 batsman of all time. So he's standing in the pantheon of the game in terms of across formats. Currently, you would say that nobody has been able to do what he has been able to do. Some would say AB de Villiers, but no one has been able to do what he has been able to do across the formats, right?
Yeah.
But
so we'll be discussing on all those 3 formats as well, and each of the format what he's done as well. So let's go with Test cricket. You can continue your point.
But what was I going to say? For some of the Caribbean fans, they only see the Chris Gayle after 2014, i.e. the guy who played loads of T20 cricket all around the world. And I think that they have confused his contribution to West Indies cricket in the first 14 years of his career versus the T20 globetrotter that he became. And they've almost used that against him to say, well, no, this guy's not given anything to West Indies cricket. Why should he get a farewell like that? And so on and so forth. But the other point that must be raised as well, and you and I were talking about this just before we went live, is the fact that maybe as well what's played a role in all this is there's not going to be any fans in Jamaica. Now, if the chief medical officer and the Jamaican government had turned around to Cricket West Indies and said there will be fans in the stadium for the matches against Ireland, maybe maybe it would have happened, or maybe there would have been something that would have happened at Sabina Park on the 16th of January in that T20 match. But as it is, maybe they've pulled the plug because there's actually not going to be any fans present. There's no point in giving him a farewell, whatever that farewell looks like, if there's not going to be any fans in the ground to recognize Chris anyways. Now, what Johnny Grave has said, and you kind of alluded to it, Pawan, is that they're saying that at some point in the future, they're still going to look at honouring him. So let's not try and pretend that Cricket West Indies aren't going to do something. Something is going to happen in terms of honouring Chris Gayle. I know that Chris wants it to happen in Jamaica, but I can't tell you when the next international match is going to take place in Jamaica. I can't even guarantee that there'll be fans there the next time we play in Jamaica. As things stand right now, we have no cricket scheduled for Jamaica for the rest, as things stand at the moment, for the rest of the year. So we could be faced with a scenario where actually there's no more cricket in Jamaica for West Indies for the rest of the year. That then takes us into 2023. By then, Chris is 43. So the option to do it, it's hard to tell where we're gonna find that kind of moment in the cricket calendar to be able to do it. So there's a slight worry in my mind that actually you might not get a farewell, because if it is going to take place at Sabina, that's all dependent on the cricket calendar now. So there's, like I say, there's so many different facets to all of this.
Yeah. So let's talk about the most underrated aspect of Chris Gayle. We talk about Test cricket, and he obviously, Machel spoke about that he played 100 Test matches. He's the fifth West Indian cricketer to play 100 Test matches. I think he scored 2 triple hundreds. Only Brian Lara matches with him, and I think across the world he's the one who scored 2 triple hundreds. There's much more. Obviously, his innings, I think he's 165 against Australia in 2009. No one remembers about that. But that innings ensured West Indies drew that match at Adelaide in 2009. And he's the only cricketer to score 6 as well in the first ball in Test cricket. No other cricketer has done that ever. And also he's played winning innings as well, especially against England, I think, in Antigua in 2009. He scored at I think it was the 4th fastest strike rate. I think he somehow chased that 90 target against New Zealand back in 2009, a Test match. Your thoughts on his Test career as a whole, Chris Gayle? Because that element doesn't is not being brought up by cricket fans because they've simply forgotten about it, because Chris Gayle last played a Test match in 2014, and we don't appreciate much about Chris Gayle, what he's done in Test cricket. And he was the captain also. He was the captain of the West Indies Test team also, after some controversies, I think 2009-10 with the West Indies Cricket Board. He was sacked as captain due to him prioritizing IPL over West Indies cricket.
At the end of the day, anybody who plays over 100 Test matches for any international team, you have to give them their flowers, and you have to recognize that they have made a major contribution to that team's international standing. I always jump to the triple centuries at the end of the day. I'm not saying that a player's stats are only determined by triples and doubles and centuries and this, that, and the other. But at the end of the day, what is it? Only 4 other players in cricket history have scored 2 triple centuries, and Gayle is the most unfashionable name to have in there because of how people assume, or what they assume about his career. All the people that love to call him a T20 mercenary, they always struggle to then explain how he's managed to get two triples in Test cricket. And yeah, I always say to people, if that was so easy, how comes more people haven't done it in Test cricket? But also, even in the pantheon of West Indies cricket, when you look at the stats, because obviously Gayle's position is as an opener. So the 2 openers that people always talk about when you mention West Indies cricket, they talk about Greenwich and they talk about Haynes. Why? Because they were part of the undefeatable side between the 80s to the 80s to the mid 90s, etc. So everyone talks about Haynes and Greenwich and they were the best and so on and so forth. But when you actually study the stats between Haynes, Greenwich and Chris, I think, if I'm trying to remember now, Greenwich is number 1, but then when you actually compare Haynes and Chris Gayle, Desmond Haynes scored 200 more runs than Chris Gayle in Test cricket, but he played, try to remember, 13 more Test matches than Chris Gayle. So it's interesting that we hold Desmond Haynes and Gordon Greenidge up there, and rightly so. But Gayle is literally just behind
Mm.
Desmond Haynes, having played 13 less Test matches than him. But nobody would ever mention that.
Yeah.
So it's bizarre. It's absolutely bizarre to me that we don't talk about his Test career as if he wasn't one of the all-time greats in West Indies cricket history. And I think, just alluding back to one of the earlier points I made as well, there is a generational. Again, it's my personal belief. There is a
Yeah.
generational divide in understanding Chris Gayle. I think people who grew up with the indestructible West Indies team, they tend to see the West Indies greats as all the people from that era. So the Lloyds, the Viv Richards, the Greenidge, the Haynes, the Marshalls, the Holdings, and all of that lot.
Yeah.
But what I tire of telling that generation is Chris Gayle is the equivalent for this generation. So this
Mm.
next generation of 20 plus, 18, 19 coming into the game, they
Yeah.
see Chris Gayle how the previous generation saw Viv, saw Lara, saw Holding, saw Marshall, saw Ambrose, etc. But I think there is a
Yeah.
generational divide in not understanding that that's how Chris Gayle is seen by the
Yeah.
next generation of cricketers. They put him on that same pedestal, and I just don't think the twin generations of West Indies cricket fandom have accepted that that's where Gayle actually belongs.
Yeah. And the direct hit here asks, should Chris Gayle have played more Test matches? This is another controversial question over here. I mean, about 2020 franchise cricket, but still, Machel, do you think he could have played more Test matches, especially after 2014, or do you think the selectors just ignored him and brought him younger players? What are your thoughts on that?
I mean, when Chris's last Test match was, I think Chris
I
was
think
trying to
against
remember.
2014
Yeah,
against
so he would have
Bangladesh. Yeah,
been about 35, 34, 35. Could you have
yeah,
played some more? Could you have gone on? Yeah, probably could have played an extra year, an extra year and a half maybe, to help, kind of like what Shiv did. Because remember, Shiv played until he was about 40. So
true.
Chris could have maybe played an extra year and a half to help build up the team as they would. Because when Chris goes in 2014, that's when you get the brand new team in 2015 led by Jason Holder, with Hope and Chase and Craig and Shane Dowrich and all of that. That was when that team came into being.
Mm.
And
Yeah,
what I always say, looking back at that side when they became like the new West Indies side in 2015, they suffered for the lack of experience to help them. The only experienced player they had in their side who was a genuine Test class batsman was Shiv Chandapal. And
yeah,
Shiv only played on for an extra year. So Shiv played 2 more years after Chris
yeah,
effectively finished. It
yeah,
possibly would have helped that young side if Chris had carried on. But then Chris was 35. West Indies at that point should have been able to call on somebody else to now play. And Chris wanted to make his money
mm,
in T20 cricket. And arguably, Chris had given 12 to 13 years non-stop service in Test cricket for West Indies. So it's not like he didn't contribute to the West Indies Test cause.
yeah. And also, I think Rohan here asked, Gale has been face of modern 2020 game. We'll be discussing that in the later slides that we are going through. But a class Test player too, and deserves respect with a farewell game. I mean, Chris Gayle asked, I think, the West Indies Cricket Board, he wanted a farewell game in West Indies as well, if I'm not mistaken, in 2019, 18, 19. He asked for whether he can play one more Test match, and he's never been given a chance to actually get a farewell game for Test cricket. So, your thoughts on that as well? Because, I mean, he does deserve a Test farewell as well with how he's contributed to West Indies cricket, playing over 100 Test matches, being, I think, the second or third best opener, I think, Test cricket, the highest run scorers as well. When you compare in the list, yeah. So your thoughts? Two triple centuries. The list goes on and on.
Listen, if another Test nation had a player of the ability of Chris Gayle, they would have celebrated him by now. and they would have celebrated him in a significant way. I am not saying that Cricket West Indies won't. I still think they're going to try and find a way to do so. I think when Chris asked for a farewell test, I think that was tongue in cheek. I don't think he actually meant he wanted to get one. I think Chris loves to just chat and be a joker sometimes. I don't think he meant that. He does
Yeah,
mean he wants a farewell game in West Indies colours, though, in front of his own fans and Sabina.
true.
Yeah, I think certainly the window for any kind of farewell test that's long gone. Like I say, any kind of conversation around Chris Gayle and a farewell game really has to be about a short format game. And like I say, it's worth pointing out as well, though, that the CEO Johnny Grave did say that they're looking at maybe doing a testimonial game, or something to that effect when New Zealand tour later this year. So, like I say, that's what they're thinking about, but we wait and see.
Yeah. So let's go to ODI cricket. I think we discussed about a lot on Test cricket. In ODI cricket, also he scored a double century against Zimbabwe in the 2015 World Cup. Then against 2019, one of my, I think, best innings I've ever watched. I think Chris Gayle against England, that 160 knock. I can't remember the ground, but that knock was just brilliant. Even though they lost that match, West Indies, that 162 was fabulous. So your thoughts, because he's the highest run scorer in ODI cricket as well. I think he got a sort of a farewell against India in 2019. I don't know whether to say that's a farewell or not in that match, but I think the Indian players did appreciate Chris Gayle's service.
Mm.
Your thoughts on his ODI career, because he's the highest run scorer for West Indies in the ODI format, and he's played over 300 matches, as you said earlier. His impact to the West Indies team in ODI, because I think that's also forgotten to all the cricket fans over here. Yeah.
Well, put it this way: the best way to sum up Chris Gayle's ODI impact, the record he has set in terms of top run scorer is not going to be beaten in our lifetime. Some will say that's a really bold claim for me to make, but that's more to do with the fact that we do not currently have a player who I think is going to have the longevity of a Chris Gayle, or I think Lara's number 2 on the list, the
Yeah.
longevity of a Chris Gayle or the longevity of a Lara to beat that record. So that's the biggest compliment you can pay Chris. That record is going to be there for a very, very long time in terms of being the West Indies top run scorer of all time in ODI cricket. And I think the other thing worth saying for Chris Gayle, it's interesting that you mentioned that 2019 162 of
England
97.
tour.
Chris Gayle was 39 years old when he did that.
Yeah.
And there were,
Yeah.
again, this is why I always talk about the reaction in the Caribbean. There were people in the Caribbean who wanted Chris Gayle nowhere near the ODI side at that time.
Mhm.
When he got selected, there were plenty of people saying, why is Chris Gayle still in the team? He's 39 years old. He shouldn't go to the World Cup. If you actually look at Chris Gayle's stats in that 5-match series versus England, he
Yeah.
scored in that 5-match series over 450 runs, something like that. The
Yeah.
next best scorer was 250 runs behind him across those
Mm.
5 matches, and that was at 39. So I think
Mm.
the other thing we just need to acknowledge with Chris Gayle is when I
Yeah.
talk about how brilliant he's been, it's not just about what he did in tests, what he did in ODIs, what he did in T20s. It's the fact he did it for so long. To
True.
still have that hunger and still prove yourself at 39 and then in the IPL at 40 and then in the IPL at 41. I think people have taken this for granted that he's been able to maintain those standards for effectively a 21-year career, which is it's actually sensational.
Mm. True. So let's go on to 2020 cricket. Obviously, we'll talk about the internationals first. 2020 internationals, how Chris Gayle revolutionized 2020 cricket. No doubt, I think he's the greatest when it comes to 2020 cricket. When it comes to batsmen, there is no doubt about that. But part one of this is on international cricket. Obviously, Chris Gayle was the first batsman to score 100 in the 2020 World Cup. By the way, 2020
Mm.
World Cup against South Africa in 2007. He's made such impact. I think in the 2014 2020 World Cup, he scored a century again against England. Also, he's played 79 matches at an average of 27.92. Yeah. So talk about the 2020 internationals first, Machel, about Chris Gayle's impact, because that's been forgotten also, especially that 2007 World Cup, where he scored 100, and the first 100 ever by a batsman in 2020 cricket. And that's where Chris Gayle was recognized.
Yeah, and I think it's important that people don't let the last World Cup 2021 taint what he's done. Again, I think there's should you have gone to that 2021 World Cup? There's an argument to say that he shouldn't have gone, that it was one step too far for him. He did not have a good World Cup. He was ripped to shreds in the media, and that West Indies had basically granted him a pick when he shouldn't have been there. But even if that's the case, and you want to say he had an awful 2021 World Cup, Chris
Yeah,
Gayle has done enough in his career. He was part of the 2012 World Cup winning team. He was part of the 2016 World Cup winning team. He has done enough. In fact, he got a century in the 2016 World Cup as well.
yeah,
He has done enough for West Indies in West Indies colours in 2020 cricket for us to overlook the 2021 World Cup. And at the end
yeah,
of the day, he can retire knowing that he was part of a West Indies team that won 2 World Cups. How many players can actually say that?
true.
So that I'm not gonna have the people who are trying to tarnish his legacy because of this last World Cup and not acknowledge that, well, actually he'd actually already helped win the team 2 World Cups earlier. So no, you're right. He's done it both internationally and around the franchise circuit.
Yeah. So we'll talk about his analysis on his batting, actually, Chris Gayle's batting, and how he was led to him being called the universe boss. So talking about his batting technique, first of all, his height factor. How big was that, especially Chris Gayle being tall and him being able to face the bowlers. I mean, when the bowler stock delivery, obviously he can knock that for a six, and when short balls are delivered, he can go down. I mean, knock down. He can somehow face that short ball. So talk about his height factor. How dependent was that for Chris Gayle? How important was that?
Do you know what? I don't know if I've ever really considered height as a major contributing factor. It's only now when you've put it on there that it's really crossed my mind that height might have played a role. Um, I just I've always just seen it more as because Chris Gayle isn't conventional. Uh, so
True.
it's hard to pigeonhole someone
Yeah.
like Chris Gayle because when he took to T20 cricket, nobody was doing what he was doing. But it wasn't like Chris Gayle took to T20 cricket and started inventing loads of different types of shots.
True.
Really and truly, he just
Ex-
cleared his front leg and had the power to muscle it over the boundary. And
Yeah. Didn't have much
even
footwork.
if
Yeah.
you go back to when he debuted in 2020 cricket, really
Mm.
and truly, how much evolution has there been in Chris Gayle's batting style from back in
True.
2006 all the way to 2021? Clear the
I,
front foot, it's in my slot, it's going for 6 or 4. That's been the story arc for 14 to 15 years of him in T20 cricket. So don't get me wrong. And actually, I
yeah.
think if I look at your point five, sorry if I go down the list,
Yeah. Quick back speed. Yeah.
quick bat speed was key. And if anything, the reason I talk about quick bat speed is because that's probably been key in his decline. And when I say
Yeah.
decline,
Yeah. That's what. Yeah.
I'm talking about
True.
decline from very, very, very lofty heights. So now, where he's at now, he's just an okay T20 player. But his level of okay T20 player is like amazing for some other players, if that makes any sense. But that
True.
decline for me is because his bat speed's now
Yeah.
and hand-eye coordination has declined, as it would do. He's 42 years old,
Yeah.
so his bat speed and
That's
hand-eye
right.
coordination has come down quite significantly. But at his peak, his bat speed and hand-eye coordination was better than any other player in the world.
Yeah. And the timing as well. Timing of the ball, where he smashes the ball. His timing, his steady base, wide stance. I mean, certain players have, but about his timing,
Mm.
executive. I mean, yes. So when it comes to his timing, is like really good because he middles the bat and somehow
Mhm.
swings the bat. and it somehow goes for a six. Talking about his timing, because against fast bowler, especially against spinners, he was so destructive. I don't think any other batsman, when it comes to facing spinners, I mean, they would definitely fear Chris Gayle as the number one batsman for sure at his prime, especially in the IPL. When he played for RCB, I think even CPL, he was so destructive at the 2013, 2015, I think the peak, where spinners didn't want to even bowl at Chris Gayle.
Yep. And that's the thing. I think I think at his peak, Gale had such a fear factor for the bowlers. So sometimes it wasn't even that the bowlers weren't bowling well. It's that his ability meant it didn't matter where you bowled it, much less if you bowled it in his slot. So basically, he at his peak, Gale had the ability to basically throw a bowler off their line and length. And granted, he was already going to hit you for six if it was in your slot, much less he then throws you off your own line of length and you're not trusting what your strategy is, and he's going to hit that for six as well. So yeah, I think I'm doing him a disservice as well, though, actually, because you're actually right to say timing. Because yes, he was muscling the ball over the boundary, but the muscling was because of the timing. It wasn't just because of the brute
Because like
force
players
sprint.
like Hetmai or Puran,
Mm,
example of Puran, he doesn't time the ball, like he goes for the for the power
yeah,
mostly on his back speed. He doesn't time the ball. Somehow he goes sails for a six, but he depends mainly on his back power. He doesn't time the ball like Chris Gayle, because Chris Gayle, we know he doesn't have much movement,
mm,
but still, and his footwork, but he still knows how to time the ball
yes,
more than
exactly.
Nicholas Puran right now. Yeah.
Which is why. So Chris has just got, for example, a BPL deal. And he'll play CPL later on this year as well. I don't know if he's
Yeah.
gonna still. He won't. I'll be surprised if he gets an IPL deal
Mm.
this year. He wasn't
Yeah,
picked up
because
in
it's a 3-year contract. Yeah, maybe
yeah.
he might.
He didn't get a PSL deal, so he'll be in the lower level leagues this year.
Mm.
He'll probably go to England and play the 100, and Chris will still do well
Yeah.
this year, and part of that will be because of your point about timing.
Mm.
Chris Gayle Chris Gayle still has a high ceiling for his timing. It's more so just the bat speed is more an issue now. But once he times it, it's he still reminds you of him at his best once he times it.
Mm. True. So let's go to franchise cricket. He is the best. I have no doubts about that. Chris Gayle, especially his 175 knock, will always be remembered. Any RCB fan will remember that knock, 175 of 66, still the highest score in 2020 cricket overall. And yeah, he's just dominated franchise cricket, and he's played in all the leagues, IPL, CPL, PSL. I don't know. This the list go endless list. He's, I think, played in every franchise cricket, if I'm not mistaken right now, and he's delivered except for the PSL. I think for the rest of the, even the 2020 Blast and even in the South African League 2020
Mm.
League, he has delivered in all those leagues except for PSL. So obviously, your thoughts on Chris Gayle dominating 2020 cricket, franchise cricket, and I think all the franchises even wanted Chris Gayle at one point for every franchise going on, and that's why I think he couldn't represent West Indies much. Your thoughts and his innings, especially against that 175 knock for RCB, and then that 100 against Sydney Thunder. Then the BPL final, I think he scored a 140 plus score for them to win the BPL title. Then against Somerset, I think he scored a 150 against in a losing cause
Mm.
also. And he's the only batsman, I think, to carry the bat also in 2020 innings. No one remembers that against Sri Lanka in the 2009 2020 World Cup. He's the only batsman ever to carry a bat in the innings. He was not out throughout. Yeah. So your thoughts? Yeah.
Listen, what can I add to that? What can I possibly add? You've just run down some of his most like key innings, and yet still we could probably find another 10 or 15 key innings
Yeah.
that is played in T20 cricket.
Two twenty
This
two
is
hundreds. Yeah.
this is
It's very
ultimately
difficult.
why he gave himself the moniker the universe boss, because nobody has been able to do what he has been able to do in T20 cricket. It'll be really what will be interesting to me to see is so what he's on 14 what and a half thousand runs or something
Yeah.
close to that in T20 cricket. I think second is, or
Aaron
14,000.
Pollard.
Great. Second behind him is Pollard. It'll be
Yeah.
interesting to see how long Pollard plays for, or if Chris has set such a standard in T20 cricket that we'll never see anybody break it. Because the thing about Chris is, Chris was one of the first to jump on the T20 scene,
True.
and fully understand what was going to happen with the with that format
Yeah.
of cricket. So
Yeah.
Test cricket woes notwithstanding, and conversations about the relevance of Test cricket and this, that, and the other, I just don't know if another player, like you've got on the screen there, 423 innings, I just don't know if another player is going to play that many innings in
I
T20
think
cricket.
Dwayne Bravo, I think, and Pollard, I think, has played more innings
Yes,
than
but
Gale.
but
Yeah.
what I mean is, I don't know if another player is going to play as many as Chris and get as close to
Yeah.
Chris
True.
as
True.
that, because to get close to Chris, they would have to produce innings like the ones that you're talking about on the screen on a
Yeah.
regular basis. And I just don't know if there's anybody in world cricket at the moment who we can look at and go, yes, they can match Chris, but also will they be able to match him for the longevity? They might be able to match him for like 5 years, but could they match
Mm.
him for 16 years? Do
Mm.
you see what I mean? So
True.
yeah, that's why he's a universe boss.
Yeah. And let's go to the last slide on this, and the last topic before we start the Q&A on his conflicts with the West Indies Cricket Board and the controversies. There's so many off-field incidents that happened with Chris Gayle. He couldn't play Big Bash League for incident that happened with a commentator, and we know that he's sort of a show off, and he wants to be called the universe boss, and had so many conflicts playing with the IPL, and the West Indies Cricket Board didn't agree with that. But your thoughts on all that, on his 19 years cricket career span, because and how that affected him not playing more matches for West Indies? Do you think these conflicts and all cause a problem, especially, and the media also hyped it up a lot, especially that Big Bash incident where he couldn't play Big Bash anymore, and then scored a fastest 50 over there at his last match for Melbourne Renegades, and he no longer went to play Big Bash after that incident. So your thoughts on that? I think at the end he won the case though. I
Yeah.
think yeah, case with the commentator, yeah, with Mel, yeah,
I think that case was about a masseuse saying that he'd exposed himself or something, but he won that case
yeah, he
against,
won
I
the
think it was
case,
against
yeah,
some newspapers for defamation. But the thing about Chris Gayle is unapologetically himself.
mm,
And the way I've always dealt with that from a fan view, or whatever, if I want to call myself a journalist in this regard, a journalist view, is that I just acknowledge that he is never going to apologize for being him. And that has been consistent for his whole career. So I'm not one of those people who gets really emotional about the latest Chris Gayle furore. I
yeah,
always just see it as, why is anybody surprised? This is Chris Gayle being Chris Gayle. He's not doing anything out of character. This has been his character since he was a young man. What I would say though is, with that character, that doesn't mean, however, that he doesn't deserve to not be censored for some of the stuff that he's done. Whether that be the comments in Australia, whether that be some of the comments he's made against the former West Indies Cricket Board, whether that be comments he made about Test cricket back in 2009. There's been enough instances in Chris's career where he probably should have relaxed a little bit before he said or did what he did. That said, it is important to remember one thing about Chris Gayle vis-a-vis West Indies cricket.
yeah,
When Chris Gayle had the conflict with the West Indies Cricket Board between 2011 and 2013, where they basically kicked him out of the West Indies cricket team for 18 months because he made some comments about the coach and this, that, and the other, history has actually proved Chris Gayle right. And what I mean by that is as follows.
yeah,
Chris Gayle saw what was going to happen with 2020 cricket. And what actually led him into a collision course with the West Indies Cricket Board was him basically not wanting to be, he wanted free trade in essence. He didn't want to be constrained by an international cricket board contract, so that he had the freedom to both play for West Indies and also play franchise cricket. That's ultimately what first got him into his major conflicts with the West Indies Cricket Board. But now, that was like, we're talking like 10 years ago. Here we are now, 10 years later, and what he was arguing about and what he wanted has become the norm. It is now normal for, again, let's use a Sri Lankan context. It is now normal for a Hasaranga to,
Mm.
where was he playing? Where was Hasaranga playing and he didn't play for Sri Lanka during the Test series?
I think
Was
Abu
it
Dhabi T10. Abu
yeah?
Dhabi T10.
So
Yeah.
Hasaranga went to play Abu Dhabi T10, didn't play in the series between Sri Lanka and West Indies, probably should have been there, whatever. But that's now normal. But 10 years ago, when Chris Gayle was trying to do that in 2020 cricket, he was called a mercenary. He was called a this, he was called a that, for basically being ahead of the game in terms of understanding the cricket marketplace and cricket economics. So I think when we look back over time, he's actually been proved right in terms of where the cricket marketplace was going.
Yeah, and also I think he was West Indies Test captain as well, and
Yes.
then there were conflicts he with him playing IPL cricket, and obviously him not getting a chance. I mean, he was removed as West Indies captain. I think back in 2011. I think him
Yeah.
prioritizing IPL over Test cricket. Do you think that was
Mm.
the right decision from Chris Gale's point of view, and from the West Indies cricket point of view, the West Indies cricket board?
I will always say that the West Indies Cricket Board handled that situation poorly. All they had to do was sit down with him and try and meet him halfway. And like I say, time has proved right here, because I remember writing about situations like Chris Gayle at the time and saying, if the West Indies Cricket Board feel that this issue is going to go away once Chris Gayle retires, they're sadly mistaken. And now we're in the exact same scenario. For Chris Gayle, read Shimron Hetmeyer. For Shimron Hetmeyer, read Nicholas Pooran, or read an Andre Russell, or read. This will never go away. So the more cricket boards sit with their players and try and ensure that they can meet them halfway about letting them have free trade and go where they want to go, but also play for their international side. That's the norm of cricket economics.
Yeah. So guys, we'll start the Q&A session.
Okay.
So anyone can ask anything on West Indies cricket to Machel, and I think he'll answer. And I hope more people will join. So Aryan, you can ask your
Yeah.
questions to Machel. Yeah.
Yeah. Hi, Mitchell. Good to see you, first of all. And
Yeah, yeah.
great discussion. And now we've seen many players. We just heard today that Hafiz even retired. Okay. I've heard Shoaib Akhtar saying that if Pakistan Cricket Board wants me in any sort of role for Pakistan team, be it coaching, be it anywhere, I'm still ready to do it. But we've seen that the boards haven't taken that experience and put it into a coaching role, which helps the national side. So, do you think the West Indies Cricket Board can put Chris Gayle in a role, maybe coaching or any sort of role that will help the young players in the West Indies team develop as they continue their careers? Maybe does Chris Gayle find a role in that regards after his retirement?
Do you know what? If there's one player I do not see in a coaching role, it's
Uh,
Chris Gayle. I just don't. But one of the reasons why I don't is because I think he just loves the party lifestyle too much.
yeah,
To be able to, for Chris to take on a coaching role, he would have to let some other aspect of his life relax for a bit. And
go.
I just don't know
Yeah,
if I see
that's not
Chris
happening.
doing something like that. That
Yeah.
said, he does have his own foundation. Um, I know that he's very good at like giving out cricket equipment to
Hmm.
impoverished kids and this, that, and the other. So it's not like he won't give back to cricket, but I
Yeah.
just don't see him to be the type of person that will say, right, I'm going to go on tour with the West Indies as their batting coach. I'm not sure.
Okay.
I'm not sure I see that. But the
Yeah.
person who I do think you will see be doing that in the next few years is Shiv Narayan Chandapal. So
Yeah.
look
True.
out for someone like Shiv to do something like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Aryan, you
Yeah.
can ask some more questions on that. Yeah.
Uh, yeah. Now with this new year, I mean, I'm very curious about a few young players. One is Jaden Seals, who I saw in the LPL. He did exceedingly well. Second is Nicholas Pooran, and as we have seen, he's taken the captaincy role whenever Pollard is not there. So let's talk about the 2022 T20 World Cup. Do you see Nicholas Pooran carrying this side and making them into such a side that it can compete well in Australia? And along with him, also Shimron Hetmyer. Are these two the fulcrum of the Windies batting lineup in that format? And also, is Jaden Seal all-time, all format player for you guys? Currently, if I ask you these questions.
Okay, so firstly with the captaincy, Pollard will captain the team all the way up to the 22. Assuming he's not injured, he will captain the
Yeah,
team all the
yeah,
way to the 2022 World Cup. I think
yeah.
after the 2022 World Cup, he will stand down and he will give it to. I think he'll let Pooran take over. I'm
Yeah.
not sure at that stage if Pollard will still play as a player, but expect Pooran to be captain after the full-time captain after the 2022 World Cup.
Uh-huh.
In regards to Pooran and Hetmyer, Pooran is further ahead in his development and maturity than Shimron is. Shimron has just failed another fitness test, so he's out of the West Indies team again, which is his third fitness test failure in a year and a half. So Shimron's is rightly being questioned about his maturity, his professionalism, but that doesn't take away from the point you're making. They should be the fulcrum of our batting. And in fairness, I mean, Nicholas is 26, Shimron is 25, right? They, to me, should, because they've been with the team for a while now, they should be further ahead in their development, if arguably. So we should be playing T20 games and looking at Shimron and Nicholas to win us those games. But arguably, you would say that if you look at the current West Indies T20 lineup, you're looking at an Evan Lewis and you're looking at a Pollard to win us a game before you're looking at a Pooran and a Hetmyer to win us a game. That doesn't mean that's not me saying that they're not good. I'm just saying that they're not where they probably should be at this juncture, because over the next few years, that's who we should be expecting to be the engine room for our T20 side.
Yes, yes. True.
Satvik, you can ask a question to Machel on West Indies cricket or anything what we discussed today on Chris Gayle. Yeah, Satvik, you can unmute. Yeah.
I think
May
he's,
I ask?
yeah.
Yeah, sure. You
Yes.
can ask. Yeah.
My first question was which West Indies player will get the maximum money in the IPL, and which island will produce the most number of players for West Indies, of even for the Caribbean Premier League.
Okay, let's do the IPL one first. That's a good question. This IPL coming up may be. I was about to say this might be the IPL with the lowest numbers of West Indians in a long, long time. So the better way to answer the IPL question is which West Indian players are guaranteed to be in the IPL, and these are the only people I can think are guaranteed. Pooran, obviously Pollard is retained anyways. Russell, Narain, those four are guaranteed no matter what. Underneath those four, you probably have a few players where I would be surprised if they don't pick up a deal. Evan Lewis, Jason Holder, Shimron Hetmyer. So they're my next three where I'm like, you should probably get a deal. That's 7. Then you've got a next pool of players, the youngsters, where I don't know if any IPL franchise will take a gamble on them. And that's Aldeen Smith, because he's now on the radar of a lot of teams. Jaden Seals. I think this is probably 1 year too early for Jaden, but next year's IPL, I'd expect to see Jaden Seals picked up. So Aldeen Smith, Jaden Seals, maybe Sherfane Rutherford, maybe, but I don't know with Sherfane if he's on an IPL radar. And actually, because that was the topic of the show, I'm going to put Chris Gayle on the list as well. Only because even though Chris shouldn't get an IPL deal, I don't know, because Chris Gayle is a brand and he's almost bigger than the game. I don't know, and particularly because there's there's 2 new franchises right this year.
Yes,
So I
yes.
don't know if somebody picks Chris Gayle up just because it's Chris Gayle and it's good for your brand, even if he's not
We
going to really
we did
contribute.
that.
So,
Mitchell, I'm a Punjab Kings fan, and we did that back in 2018. We bought
mm,
him in the last category, the unsold category.
yeah,
We bought him for 2 crores, and then he stayed for us like 3 to 4 years. So as you said, he's just we picked him for the brand value, and the man who did that was Virendra Sehwag. He was on the bench for us that time, so he was picked up. In the auction. And I have a counter question on Nicholas Puran. Just seeing him play for us for so many years, he came in and we talked him as the replacement for a David Miller. Because
mm,
Miller was with us for a long time. He was a proven match winner, but we saw that Nicholas Puran can play that role. However, the way he has been getting out in the IPL, despite having so much talent, because we know as fans that he is our match winner. He can turn the match on its head, within the matter of like 18 balls. So, do you think his match situation, I mean, match awareness, reading the situations, is that somewhere he can improve? Because I have a very strong feeling he might need to improve on that point. Going in the future, even for the West Indies, the match awareness, just that point for Puran.
so I can all I can do with Nicholas is so shortly after IPL finished, obviously we went to the World Cup last year, and I was in a press conference with Nicholas Puram, and I can't remember if I asked him this question or if it was someone else, but he was being asked a question about his form, particularly in the IPL, and Nicholas's explanation for it was he said that he wasn't worried about his form, and that he just felt that how did he explain it? He said he just felt that he'd gone through a rough trot of in that particular IPL, which he found
Yes.
hard to get out of, but he wasn't concerned that this was going to signal like some kind of decline in his game. And then, in fairness, if you look at the World Cup, he played maybe 2 notable innings out of the 5 games in the World
Yes.
Cup, and he's just gone to Pakistan, and he did all right in Pakistan. So I just think and I hope that kind of stretch he had with Punjab, it was just a poor stretch of form, and he got
Mhm.
himself in a rut, and he didn't know how to hit himself out of it.
Yes.
They'll be
Mhm.
interested. Obviously, I'm expecting. Well, I don't know if Punjab will get him again, but someone's going to get him.
No,
And
they're gonna get
someone's going to get him because the
yeah.
ceiling is so high for him that
Yes.
it's worth taking the risk. But
Definitely.
it'll be
Definitely.
interesting to see who takes him, though.
True.
And I have a feeling one of the new teams is going to poach him. And we don't know the 3 picks yet, so he might be one of the 3 picks for the
Mm.
2 new teams in the IPL. We don't know that. And well, seeing Chris Gayle, I saw him live play against Chennai, where he was sort of making a comeback, and I could just tell that he has an aura when he's on the ground. You could just sense that being at the ground, and the way he, as you said, he picked up what T20 cricket is, what it's going to become. And the way he just plays his innings, I'm sure, Machel, you have also thought of this, like, okay, this guy's playing slow, he's taking his time, why is he not going for the shots? That is the thought when we first saw Chris Gayle. But then you realize that he knows what he's doing. He's
Mm.
out there, he knows what he's doing, what he's planning, and well, in the end, you see him. He's 90 or 40 odd balls. But yeah, he's a very true gift to the game, and well, he says he's not going anywhere. He's on the
Yeah, he's
Instagram.
not leaving.
He's not leaving. He ain't leaving. So we hope he doesn't leave because he's a true entertainer. Yeah, that's what I gonna say. And the farewell, well, he should get it because in Indian cricket we have seen plenty of players who deserve the farewell and they didn't get it. So maybe the West Indies board has something planned for him. Yeah, that's
Mm.
what I want to say on Chris Gayle. Yeah.
Even Shankar here says Gale deserves a farewell game, having contributed so much for West Indies cricket. Yeah, definitely 100%. I also have a question to ask. Depending on Sunil Narayan, I know you posted this on your Instagram story. It's going to be very difficult to talk on Sunil Narayan's fitness and on Shimron Hetmaya as well. His fitness 3 times he's failed, if I'm not mistaken, this year itself. Why are current West Indies batsmen not keeping up to their fitness standards right now? It's a big question, and why a player like Hetmeyer not passing a fitness test right now and not playing for West Indies cricket for the upcoming series is a big concern. So, your thoughts on that, Mitchell? Yeah.
I just don't. Okay, let's deal with Sunil first. So Sunil, I can't speak for Sunil Narain.
Yeah.
And I always worry when I make this statement. I'm still going to say it, but I always worry when I say it because everyone just assumes that this is the case, but no one actually knows if it is. People assume that Sunil doesn't make himself available for West Indies because he's worried about getting called in international cricket. I don't think it's as simple as that, but I think that's the number one reason most people seem to think. The World Cup, depending on who you listen to, apparently Sunil made himself available for selection for the World Cup. That's apparently, like I say, it depends on who you listen to. But then there's other stories about him not being fit or not passing a fitness test or refusing to take a fitness test or whatever, or just not making himself available to take a fitness test. My personal belief is the only way Sunil Narain will ever play for the West Indies again is if Kieron Pollard is able to convince him to do so. But will Sunil just make himself available for West Indies? Unlikely. To the point where I don't expect him to see him play for us ever again. But if Kieron Pollard is able to sit down with him and convince him to return for like next year's World Cup, T20 World Cup, we may see him again, but who knows? Shimron.
Yeah.
The only thing I can say about Shimron Hetmeyer is that Cricket West Indies need to find him a mentor. That's the only thing I can say.
Yeah.
If you fail a fitness test 3 times by the age of 25, it's got to be bigger. There's got to be something bigger there that people aren't seeing, whether it's something to do with like a mental application reason, a maturity reason, a psychological issue. It is not normal for a 25-year-old international athlete to fail again and again, and that doesn't make any sense. If it was like an old person, yeah, I'd understand, but 25, and the pictures that have come out from him taking the fitness test, you can tell he failed it. You can just tell by looking at it that he failed it.
But my only doubt about this fitness is when Cornwall, he can't even run 2 runs. I was watching the West Indies versus Sri Lankan test, and I was watching Cornwall very closely, Rakim Cornwall. He can't run like very quickly when it comes to 2 runs when he's running. He
No,
just
he can't.
simply can't. That's the thing. So I have some problems with, I mean, some critiques when it comes to the West Indies selection with this fitness, because if
Right.
Cornwall somehow passes the fitness test, and I don't want to say bad things about Cornwall, but if he's passing, why can't Sunil Narain? Because he's performed well for KKR, for West Indies, for KKR for the IPL, and he did really well for KKR in the second leg especially. So I have a doubt, if they're passing Cornwall, why aren't they passing like key players like Chandrapal Hetmaraj or even Sunil Narain,
Right,
or even
okay.
Hetmaya coming up? Yeah, so
And you're right. You are 100% correct to say that. But I think Rohan's just said, if you bring up his comment, he's just said what the issue is, right? And I'm on our channel, I've done a video about this. The problem is as follows. Rakeem Cornwall has been big since he was a little boy. So Rakeem, some people in life are just big. Rakeem Cornwall is a big guy. He's probably got a poor diet as well, but he's also just he's big boned. He is legitimately a big bone guy. Anybody who's been watching him since young cricket days to now, that's always been Rakeem Cornwall. It's not like he was 15 and then he suddenly got big. He was always big. He played all the way through domestic cricket big and has made his international debut big. So part of it to me is that is actually Rakeem Cornwall. Now, but that doesn't mean you're not right to mention the issue that it poses. Now, what Cricket West Indies have said is that some players, Rakeem is one of them, get medical exemptions. I have no problem with that, actually. I can understand, because that Rakeem's a big guy, I can understand that there is probably a legit medical reason for him being the way he is. The problem is this. The media don't know what it is. The fans don't know what it is. So you are correct to then say to me, but how's
Yeah.
Raheem in the team and someone like Shimron can't get in and someone, because when you just look at it at face value, it doesn't make any sense. What
Yes.
fitness test is going on where Raheem can be pass fit, but Shimron can't be pass fit?
Yeah.
Now, I know, and I'm telling you factually, that that's because Raheem has a medical exemption, which means, as Rohan says, there is a different standard that Raheem has to meet relative to whatever this medical exemption is that he's got.
Yeah.
The counter to that, and what some are saying in the media, which I also agree with, is that, but everybody's got to do the same thing on the cricket field. So if let's look at that Sri Lanka test, okay? So
Yeah.
pick a player. Nasanka hits a ball, right? Fine cuts it between De Silva and Cornwall at first slip. Josh De Silva knows Raheem's not running that ball down. Do you know what I mean? De Silva's then got to take his gloves off and run off in his wicketkeeper pads to go run after the ball because he's going to get there before Raheem, even if Raheem tried. So the problem here is, I understand why there's a medical exemption. I understand why there's different standards for different players. But once you touch the field, everybody's got to do the same thing. So the argument that is going on in the Caribbean is, how fair is the fitness test? And I agree with that. But this is where I then draw the line. I agree with all of that, but none of that excuses Shimron, because Shimron is a 25-year-old fit international athlete who should be. The test isn't difficult. The test that they have to pass isn't even difficult. So I did some investigation into it. What Cricket West Indies are asking these players to pass is the exact same that Sri Lanka are asking their players to pass, that India are asking their players to pass, that we've all got the same standard. Because I spoke to people, Cricket West Indies, and said, what's Sri Lanka's standards? What's Pakistan's standards? Everybody's got the same standard. It's 17 on, I don't know what the equivalent would be called in Asia, but it's we call it yo-yo test, but they have to get 17. Yeah, right. So they have to get 17. That's what India expect. That's what Pakistan expect. That's what Sri Lanka expect. That's what Bangladesh expect. So I look at Shimron Hetman and say, what's your excuse? It's not even hard. So there's another train of thought that some people have. I don't agree with this. I'm not saying I agree with this, but I can see why people are thinking this. Is Shimron failing the test on purpose? Now, I'm telling you that I don't agree with that. But the reason why people are saying it is because by the time IPL comes, I bet you he's fit for IPL. I bet you he'll be ready for IPL. So my argument is this: how are you not ready to play for West Indies? But when you get your IPL deal, you'll be going out to IPL. So that this is a big. I'll probably have to return for a different episode, but this is a big talking point around
that's
fitness
maybe a self motive in somewhere. A player is speaking personally that I want to make money, and IPL is the ultimate goal for me, so I'll just be fit and then go for the IPL, and then I just don't care. But as you said, Aaron Pollard. Now I'll just give you a very clear example of how fitness has evolved in the Indian setup. Virat Kohli was not even the captain. We won the 2013 Champions Trophy, and then MSD left. But then Virat Kohli was the one who decided that if we want to be the best in the world, we have got to have 11 players on the park who are the fittest of all the players in the domestic circuit. He set the standards so high that no player could have come in the squad if he didn't pass. You must have heard of Ambati Raidu. Ambati Raidu, he was out because he didn't pass the fitness test, and the coach Ravi Shastri supports that. He supported that he should pass the fitness test.
Yeah. I think Aryan got stuck.
I agree with the point he's making, though, in terms of
Basically,
oh, you're back. Oh, hold on.
bit dodgy. Sorry, my net is a bit dodgy. Am I okay now, Pawan?
Yeah.
You can hear me.
Yeah.
My question is, does the captain and the coach need to be blunt to the players that if you don't, are fit enough, you aren't fit enough, you're not going to get in the squad. Do whatever you want. First criteria is to get fit. Is is it something the coach and the captain can stress on, and then the players realize that okay, we need to prioritize fitness to get in the team?
Well, yes is the answer. And Phil Simmons in the press conference on Sunday, Saturday, sorry, basically said what you said. I'm paraphrasing, but Phil basically said, we are so disappointed in Shimron because he knew what he had to do and he still failed. So I agree with them that you have to follow principle and just drop him. It doesn't matter if he's one of the best players, just drop him and say, well, you're not listening. And if it means that we don't play now without Shimron for 6 months or whatever it be, so be it. Because I don't know how else to get it through to him that you actually have to take your career seriously. And in fact, actually, was it CPL 2020? CPL 2020. This was before Shimron went to play for Delhi in 2020, start of 2021.
Yeah.
He turned up to CPL overweight, and it was visibly overweight to the point where Samuel Badri, like how sometimes the players have the earpiece in there when they're on the field. So the commentator was Samuel Badri, and Samuel Badri was speaking to Shimron on air. And he said to Shimron, whilst live on air, by the time, because Badri was leg spin coach for Delhi last year, and Badri said to Shimron live on air, make sure you shed all of those pounds by the time you get to Delhi. No one could believe it. Like, we couldn't believe that he was saying it live on air, but that's how obvious it was that Shimron was out of shape, that even Samuel Badji was just saying it live on air. You look like you're out of shape. Make sure you sort yourself out by the time you turn up in Delhi. So for me, there is something psychologically going on for Shimron. And if it means you have to drop him, you have to drop him for it to get through to him that this isn't going to be acceptable anymore.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Any more questions? So we'll comment. Aryan, any more questions to ask? Yeah.
Yeah, no, just one point. Maybe he needs some, like you said, a mentorship, maybe some support, psychological support, if he can get that. There are many medical professionals who do help players get through rough phases. I've seen it in movies. I've heard stories about it. So maybe that is something Shimron should take help, because these are difficult times and we are living in a world where you can't go out, you can't do stuff, and plus these factors maybe lead to stress, and that's not something we want in cricket, and certainly not for an individual. So maybe he should gain some help, and maybe, because we all know the talent he is, but again the external factors are those which are coming in his way. And I think maybe just a bit of help can bring him back, hopefully. Yeah.
Yeah. Also, Machel, I have to ask about this because certain West Indies players went to play the US Major League because they were obviously aren't being representing West Indies for, like, because of the fitness issues going on, like Chandrapal Hetmaj, one reason, and Sunil Narayan. So many, I think a lot of West Indies players did go and play the US Major League. Do you think in the future, maybe if these West Indies cricketers, if they don't get a chance, like if they're not going to pass this fitness test going on regularly, do you think that they might go and switch to US cricket maybe because of these players now going and playing for US leagues, and especially with the 2024-2020 World Cup, with the USA going to host the 2024 World Cup alongside the West Indies? Do you see that happen, transfer going on right now? Yeah.
I don't see current players on the fringes of West Indies selection doing it, but USA are trying to work towards getting full member status by 2030. I think the minute the United States get full member status is when you'll start to see some people jumping ship, and just feeling like, I already know that, like, the US, not the minor league, but the US Open, which is another competition that was run just before Christmas. Players were getting paid West Indian players were getting paid very, very well in that competition, to the point where there's soon going to reach a point where it makes more financial sense to play in America in their kind of minor leagues, major leagues, this tournament, that tournament, than it does to play for your own island or country back in regional tournaments. So, as I always say in West Indies cricket, money talks, and West Indian players will go where the money is. That's the reality of cricket economics.
Yeah, because the US Open, I think it was a very successful tournament back in November. And a lot of people were talking, especially even West Indian commentators, journalists, they were talking about this US Open league going on and maybe can expand in the next 5 years, maybe after 2024, especially with the 2020 World Cup, when both West Indies and US are going to host the 2020
Yeah.
World Cup. And how impactful that will that be for US cricket also, because all of a sudden US cricket is jumping and leaping, because right now they are getting rights to host, not being a full member status yet, them hosting the 2020 World Cup in 2024. How much of a benefit will that be for US cricket right now, and them getting that full member status, as you said, what they're targeting on in 2030.
Well, as I understand it, they're already targeting players from other countries, anyways, who might come over, get the relevant documents, live, etc. So, I mean, it's hard to tell. It's hard to tell, but I think the 2024 World Cup will be the next moment at which you should look at it and see who has made the jump, if anyone. For example, so Chandra, if I'm right, I could be wrong. I need to double check this.
Yeah.
Chandrapal Hemraj is living in the States at the moment, for example, just to take him as an example. So how long is it before he qualifies for US naturalization, and therefore would just, if I was him, I'd just play for America. I wouldn't play for West Indies. So
I think Hayden Walsh Jr.
Hayden Walsh did that and then come back the other way. But Chandrapal Hemraj could play for the United States, for example, and then still play for Guyana in franchise cricket. So it's not like it would take him away from the domestic cricket scene. So that might be the best of both worlds. I could be wrong about that Hemraj information living in the States. I'll go and double check that. But that's my understanding.
Yeah. Rohan, any questions to ask to Machel on West Indies
Yeah,
cricket?
Machel, you're talking about 2024. There's a Olympics coming in from Los Angeles at 2024. Do you think that can also have an influence with regards to players trying to qualify to USA from the Caribbean and other parts of the world? We have seen certain Indian players also trying to migrate to US. So isn't Olympics also could be a small little factor that people would be interested in because it's a global stage?
Yeah, and I think the last podcast episode we did was with Tom Dummel, who's like key in Major League Cricket, and he spoke about the Olympics being key. So yeah, I think that's a good point. I hadn't even thought about the Olympics. The Olympics plays a key factor as well. But ultimately, what will play the biggest factor will be, can I, as a cricketer, if I speak on like third person, can a cricketer, or can I, if I was a cricketer, make more money playing in America than I can playing in the West Indies? And if the answer is yes, then people start to move.
Yep. Like a few Sri Lankan players, if I'm not mistaken, I've heard they have moved to the US. And
Shreyan Jayasuriya and Amila Ponso, 2 players left to the
yeah,
US.
because cricket is these days, cricket, the way it has evolved over the years, it's just not the game. It's now just not the way you play your skill set. It's more of the economic factors. It's the money that comes with it. You know, it's the brand, the marketing, because players search for it. And as Machel said, the players will go where the money is. And I think USA that you pointed out, it's a good start. It's not a bad start at all.
True.
With the leagues that they have produced, and the CPL being held in the United States was a huge achievement, because that shows that the West Indies cricket are also, you know, aware of the fact that USA is an upcoming nation in the cricketing arena, and India played against the West Indies
In Florida,
in Fort Lauderdale.
Aryan,
Yeah.
to add to it, USA is a lot of expat Indians or Asians live there. So the selling
Yes.
point is
Like
also high
Malhotra,
for cricket there compared to a Caribbean nation.
Yeah,
True.
the All Stars League, if you guys remember, that also took place
Yeah.
in America, and that really helped the interest of the crowd in cricket. So I think, yeah, USA is off to a great start, and we'll have to see how they manage. How do they manage and pull off the 2024 World Cup? If they are able to do that, then as Machel said, the international status is not far away. Maybe they can get it 2 years earlier. He's saying
Yeah.
2030, but if all goes well in 2024, maybe 2028 is the year we see them potentially get the international status. So yeah,
True.
and
Yeah.
that's for US cricket. Yep.
Shankar here asks, why are ex-West Indies cricketers not getting involved in reviewing West Indies cricket?
Reviving,
Reviving.
Reviving Test cricket, West Indies cricket. Yeah,
I mean, quickly on that one, some are, some aren't. The person you need to look out for is Shiv. Shiv has just done his level 3
coach.
coaching
Yeah,
badges, so he is currently with the
the under
West
19s.
Indies under 19s for the World Cup as their batting coach, batting consultant, etc. I would be very surprised if Shiv, when Phil Simmons leaves as West Indies head coach I think his contract goes up until the end of the ODI World Cup. So if that's not renewed, I would be surprised if Shiv isn't in the running to end up as the next West Indies head coach. If not in 2023, very, very soon. So some people are. The reason why some people aren't is because the reality of, again, I'm not saying that I'm completely right on this, but this is my view. The reality is some of these ex-players prefer to just be in the media and criticize everything rather than actually get involved. So it's much easier to sit at the sidelines and say, this is wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong, than actually go and get your hands dirty and try and do anything about it. So you will see a lot of the legends on. So, for example, like when PS Viv was on he was on TV. He was in like one of their shows or something like that.
Yes.
And I remembered watching one of them. I think it was when Shoaib and that guy had that falling out live on air or whatever. And I remembered watching it thinking, but hold on a minute. Viv's over there, and there's a reason why he's over there, because he's getting paid a lot of money to be over there. But there's no use someone like a Viv telling everybody what's wrong with West Indies cricket when you're Viv Richards. What are you doing? Like, what are you doing? What are you doing to actually give back and that what these people say is that they're not being invited? Nonsense. You're Viv Richards. You're Viv Richards. You just have to show up. You just have to show up and say,
you don't need the invitation.
He's the king.
And that's not to target Viv. I'm just using that as an example. So I think it's easier to be on the sidelines. I think it's easier to snipe because it's much harder to effect change. The things that need to change in West Indies cricket are so deep and so entrenched that it doesn't matter who you are. You could be the greatest batsman of all. Lara is he's just signed with whichever IPL team. Can't remember.
Sunrisers.
Right.
Yeah.
So Lara's just got a batting consultant deal with Sunrisers, but Lara's not done anything for West Indies. Now, that's because I expect Brian would say, well, I've not been offered anything. But at the same time, Brian himself would say the problems in West Indies cricket are so entrenched that it almost would tarnish his reputation to come and help, and we still continue losing. do you see what I mean? So it's there's a lot of factors involved there. Who really wants to help a side that always loses?
Yes.
Really and truly. So
yeah. Harindu asks here, can you explain the domestic system of West Indies cricket? I don't know whether this will take a long time over here.
Yeah, that's a long one. So here's a 30-second answer.
Yeah, 30. Short answer.
You basically have 6 teams: Barbados, Guyana, Trinidad, Jamaica, Leeward Isles, which are a combination of different countries, and Windward, which is a combination of different islands, as well. Those 6 teams, if COVID wasn't around and it was a normal calendar year, those 6 teams would play against each other in a 50-over competition called Super 50, which runs in February. They would all play each other twice, semi-finals, finals. That's February. Then between about March and May/June, when IPL's going on, there would be the first class system where they all play each other twice, and whoever's got the most points, 12 points for a win, this, that, and the other, that's your first class champions. And then CPL would be in October, which is the T20 competition. Those aren't the same teams in CPL because Leewards and Windwards then come out of it and they're replaced by St. Lucia and I'm missing someone who I can't remember.
Trinidad and Tobago, right?
Saint Kitts.
St. Kitts, yeah. St.
Saint
Lucia
Kitts.
and St. Kitts, sorry.
Yeah.
And then that would be your 6 teams in that sense. So that's the breakdown in terms of ODI first class CPL. The only other thing to say is that sometimes, again, if COVID wasn't around, you would normally have some extra teams in the ODI competition and this first class competition. So you might have America get invited over or Canada get invited over. Or an emerging players team, which is made up of like under 23s and stuff like that. But that's basically the quick answer to that question.
Yeah. Satwik, any questions to ask since you
Yes,
joined?
yes. First question was that the ODI competition, the list A competition. Earlier, there were teams like USA and Canada and all those teams involved in the Super 50 competition. Now they are not involved, and only the regional teams are involved. Which format do you think has been better for West Indies? The older version or the new version? Because in the older version, we have seen TNT Red Steel or Red Force win many tournaments, whereas now the recent were Jamaica Scorpions.
Yeah.
Yes. So
I prefer the format that has teams invited. So there's also been iterations of Super 50 where like English county sides have played in it because they've been on their pre-season before the county season starts. So Hampshire and Kent have played in the Super 50 competition as well. The reality is there has to be more teams because 6 teams isn't enough. And something that I've suggested to Cricket West Indies, which I don't think it's going to happen anytime soon, but I keep telling them that what they should do in the first class competition is have a team which is just the not West Indies under 19, but basically any player who is promising that didn't get into their island side. Because if you think about it, if there's only 6 teams, what happens to all those players that don't get into a first class team? So I might be so look, Barbados is a good example, right? If everybody is available for Barbados, there is no guarantee that someone like Chamar Holder gets in the Barbados side because Jason Holder would be back, Kimar Roach would be back, for example. So then what are you saying? That Chamar Holder therefore doesn't play in the whole first class season because he can't get into his island side. So I keep saying that what Cricket West Indies need to do is they need to include a team which is basically the best of the rest and base them out of one of the islands. But these are so when I'm saying to you there's like entrenched issues within West Indies cricket, that's one of them. For example, you shouldn't just be sitting at home just because you can't get into your island side when you could actually be a very good cricketer. So
I can actually vouch for that because Rohan, if you remember, we in India had a few less teams in Ranji circuit. Then we increased it, right? And I can name a few players like Taruvar Kohli. He used to play for Punjab earlier. Then suddenly he goes and changes his state. Northeast. He goes to the Northeast. So, like you said, there are many players in the West Indies who are not getting the chances because of the number of teams. In India, players keep changing their Ranji side because they feel that they're not getting in. So they go
Vinay
to some
Kumar as well.
Yeah, and that's
shifted to Puducherry after playing for
Kannada. Don't sit idle, and obviously there's scouting. Scouting
age was the factor. So I don't think that would be a matter of concern. If it's a younger player doing that, that's a concern. Once you're 35, 36, you are just moving around states as a mentor to those smaller teams. So I don't think that's a concern. For me, a bigger concern could be, Machel, is the standard of pitches that the domestic cricket is being played on. Pretty slowish, sluggish. I don't think that will help batsmen, especially maturing into international cricket, where the pace and bounce is higher and faster bowlers. The standard of cricket needs to be improved in terms of the pitches as well, I'll say.
100%. And not too dissimilar to all of the talk that's coming out of the Ashes now, with everyone talking about the England and their domestic system. The reality is that put it this way, if you go back and look at first class stats all the way back to probably 2013, 2014, maybe even before then, the top wicket takers have always been Versamy Permaul, Rakeem Cornwall, Nikita Miller, right? That every year since 2014. None of those players. I know Vasami just took 8 wickets in Sri Lanka, so I know he's just done something. But he's now 32. I'd like to think he's honed his craft now. But every year, those spinners have dominated the domestic scene. With all due respect to Permol and to Cornwall and Nikita Miller, none of them are world beaters on the international stage, if that makes sense. So you saw what Sri Lanka's spinners did to us in the Test series, right? They made us look silly. But we have Permol and Cornwall making us look silly in our own domestic season, and the Sri Lankan spinners are above them. So what are we learning on our pitches? If you see what you see what I'm saying, we've got spinners taking wickets on low tracks. Our fast bowlers don't take a lot of wickets on our tracks. So if we go to Australia, we're going to get blown away. If we go to Sri Lanka, we're going to get spun away. So our pitches aren't helping us. Our pitches aren't helping us, not even for ourselves in our own conditions. So do you see? Obviously, your point is valid.
Yeah. So guys, we'll have to end this because Machel has to leave within 2 minutes. So we'll end this. So thank you so much, Aryan, Satvik, and Rohan for asking questions. We had to end this session, unfortunately. So thank you guys for coming. Yeah, for the Q&A. Yeah, so I'll be reviewing you guys. Yeah.
Thank you,
So thank you
Machel.
so much, Machel, as well, for coming. And it was a great discussion with you, especially on Chris Gayle and about his farewell, and then obviously talking about doing a Q&A with the cricket fans. So thank you so much, Machel, for taking your time, and I hope we can bring you back soon with another controversial West Indies topic going on very soon. But this is very important to discuss on, and that's why I had to bring you on the sports breakdown. So thank you so much for accepting my invite.
No worries, man. Thanks for having me on. And again, anyone who's watching this, whether you come here from the Carib Cricket channels or etc., make sure you subscribe to the Sports Breakdown and follow all the good content they're doing. And like I say, thanks for having us on, man. And I hope to talk soon.
Yeah. And please subscribe to this Caribbean Cricket Podcast as well. And please check them out on their podcast on Spotify, Apple, and on Anchor FM. Please do check them out because they do some awesome content. And yeah, you don't want to miss them out. So yeah, that's it from the Sports Breakdown. Thank you so much. So please do subscribe to the Sports Breakdown if you're a new viewer here or if you're watching right now. If you haven't clicked the subscribe button, please do. And please click the notification bell on. So thank you so much, guys. And yeah, we'll see you guys in the next video. We are doing a show on Wednesday actually, on India cricket. I mean the India ODI squad coming up. So we'll be doing that. I think Machel left. We are going to do that with the third man cricket show, which is Sanchit is going to come from the third man cricket show and cricket talks with Garvit. So both of them, I won't be sending the link once again for that video because Sanchit is a bit busy, but he's the current host of the third man cricket show. He'll be coming along with Garvit on Wednesday to analyze on the India ODI squad ahead of the South Africa series, and we'll be talking about the South Africa series as well. So 2 more guests coming along at Wednesday 8 o'clock PM IST. So please do check that out. Until then, see you guys, and please keep updated with the sports breakdown. Goodbye and have a safe day, and good night, guys.